Hello friends, in this interesting session I am going to examine the current status of left-wing extremism problem in India. In this session, my focus will be to brief you that which all parts of India are affected with Naxal problem. I will also be discussing in detail the developments related with left-wing extremism, and I will also be doing a trend analysis of Naxal violence, Naxal incidents, deaths and bloodshed related with Naxal violence in India in the recent past. And thereafter, you will have great understanding that how Naxalism or left-wing extremism remains a threat to internal security of India. So we are all set to start the discussion on left-wing extremism current status, right? Current status. And I would just like you all to first know this, that whether we call it Naxalism or we call it left-wing extremism or we call it Maoist insurgency. Now all the three even today remains a threat to internal security of India. Internal security of India. On what basis we can say that it remains a threat to internal security of India? Now, in this regard, the first reason why it remains a threat to internal security is its widespread. Is it widespread? And you need to understand that how much is the spread of this problem in India. Now, this left-wing extremism was problem of one village. In 1967, right, in 1967, it was problem of one village. And the spread continued by 2000. In this period, there was massive expansion, territorial expansion as far as left-wing extremism as a problem is concerned, and it became the problem of country. You will be surprised to know by end of 2010, it became the problem of the country, and more than 40% geographical area of India, more than 40% geographical area of India, geographical area of India was affected with LWE problem, left-wing extremism problem. In this regard, one term which gained prominence is Red Corridor, is Red Corridor. Okay, Red Corridor. What is Red Corridor? Red Corridor is basically the worst Naxal affected area in India, and it is a contiguous belt. Okay, and this belt starts from Indo-Nepal border in the north, right? It starts from Indo-Nepal border in the north, and it continues up till Andhra Pradesh in the south, up till Andhra Pradesh in the south. So, starting from Indo-Nepal border in the north, starting from Indo-Nepal border in the north, it continues, right? It continues up till Andhra Pradesh in the south. Okay, so whole of Bihar, whole of West Bengal, entire Jharkhand, entire Chhattisgarh, eastern part of Uttar Pradesh, eastern half of Madhya Pradesh, eastern part of Maharashtra, entire Telangana, northern part of Andhra Pradesh, okay, entire Odisha falls within this red corridor. And let me just tell you that government of India is saying that it is the worst Naxal affected area in India. But if you will read Naxal documents, then you will find mention of red corridor as a reason where Naxals are more influential than government. So you should never use the expression that red corridor is a belt in which Naxals are more influential than government. You should say that this red corridor is a contiguous belt starting with Indo-Nepal border in the south up till Andhra Pradesh, starting in Indo-Nepal border in the north up till Andhra Pradesh in the south, and this is the worst Naxal affected area in India. Now in red corridor, what you should remember that there are 10 Indian states, 10 Indian states which are there in red corridor. Which are those? One is Andhra Pradesh, second is Bihar, third is Chhattisgarh, fourth one is Jharkhand, fifth is, okay, the fifth Indian state is Madhya Pradesh, the sixth Indian state is Maharashtra, the seventh Indian state which is the part of red corridor is Odisha, right? The eighth Indian state is Telangana, the ninth Indian state is Uttar Pradesh, and of course the 10th is West Bengal. And these 10 states are the worst Naxal affected states in India. I would just like you all to remember this, right? I would just like you all to remember this, that though these are the states which are affected with Naxalism, but out of the 10 which are affected with Naxal problem, this Chhattisgarh and Jharkhand, these two are the worst Naxal affected states in India. These two, right, they are worst LWE affected states in India. Okay, in India. I would just like you all to remember this, that if we see, right, if we see more than 70%, right, more than 70% Naxal incidents are reported from these two states, and more than 80% deaths in Naxal violence, reported from these two states. Not only this, I would just like you all to remember this, that if we see, right, if we see these 10 states, right, more than 76 districts from these 10 states are affected with left-wing extremism and they fall within red corridor. Now, this large area of India is affected with, this much large area of India is affected with left-wing extremism. So, because of wide spread, the large part of India on which the problem exists, this remains a threat to internal security. So, this is the first, thing which you should know. Now, second important thing related with current status is Naxal violence, and Naxal incidents plus deaths reported in Naxal violence. Okay, that also makes this problem a threat to internal security of the country. I would just like you all to remember this, okay, that if we see, right, if we see the graphical representation, of Naxal incident, so the problem was always there. But just to explain you, let us say that this is 1967. Let us assume for a while, right? Let us assume for a while that this is 2004. Let us assume for a while that this is 2010, and let us assume this is 2020. Okay, and on this axis, if we see, Naxal incidents, let us do like this, that just to explain you, okay, what is the current. So 1967 onwards, okay, the problem was there, but it became a threat and it was increasing like this. And in 2004 to 2010, we saw a very sharp increase. Okay, and thereafter, we are seeing a declining trend. Okay, this is one thing which you should see, and second is this kind of graph you will see. Okay, second is this kind of graph. This kind. This is this is Naxal. This is Naxal incidents, and this is this is deaths reported. That's reported in Naxal violence in India. Okay, Naxal violence in India. I just want you all to remember this, that since 2010, since 2010, this is, okay, So what we are finding, since 2010, there is a declining trend, in LWE, violence, and if you see, the number of Naxal incidents is on a declining trend, as well as deaths reported, right, as well as deaths reported in Naxal violence is also on a declining trend. I would just like you all to remember, for example, right, if I give you year-wise figure, in 2010, okay, in 2010, India reported, right, in 2010, India reported from Red Corridor Belt approximately 2213 incidents, and in these 2213 incidents, 1005 people died, deaths reported, and we have figure for 2018, and similar figure is also for 2019 now. Okay, in 2018 this came down, right, this came down to, right, this came down to 833 incidents, 833 incidents, and in these 833, 240 deaths. But despite declining trend in left-wing extremism violence since 2010 till 2020, what is the disturbing aspect? That in between some big incident will happen, and that is demoralizing factor for state as well as security forces. So Naxals are successful in making a big attack in between on our security forces and on other government organization or people, and in between some big incident is what is the disturbing facet of Naxal violence. Otherwise, it is very heartening to see the manner in which Government of India, in collaboration with the state governments of Red Corridor Belt, has approached the problem of left-wing extremism. We are seeing a declining trend of Naxal violence in India. But in between, some or big incidents which are happening is a disturbing factor and can be a demoralizing factor as well, both for state and security forces. Now, in this regard, I would just like you all to remember that why we are saying that left-wing extremism remains a threat to internal security of the country. I would just like you all to remember that, see, 1967 till 2004, right, 1967 till 2004, what we have seen, there were birth of many left-wing extremist outfits, okay, and they were operating, right, they were operating in different part of India. They were operating in different part of India. Okay, so many small left-wing extremist outfits with different name, with some cadre, armed cadre, some supporter were operating in different part of India. But 2004 onwards, this problem became a big threat, one of the biggest threat to the internal security. You know why? Out of different outfits, the two biggest outfits were PWG, People's War Group, and this was operating in, right, Jharkhand, present day Jharkhand, this was operating in Andhra Pradesh, right. People's War Group was one big outfit which was operating in Andhra Pradesh and present day Telangana, okay. And another was MCCI, okay, that is Maoist Communist Center of India, Maoist Communist Center of India. And this, right, this was People's War Group, People's War Group. Okay, these were the two biggest. Okay, so Maoist Communist Center of India, this was operating in present day Bihar, Jharkhand and some adjoining areas. Now in 2000, right, in 2004, the two decided to merge together along with some other small outfits. Okay, and the merger led to the formation of CPI, right, merger led to the formation of CPI Maoist, merger led to the formation of CPI Maoist. Okay, and this CPI Maoist today is the biggest Naxal outfit. This merger in 2004 led to a multiplier effect as far as strength of this organization is concerned. This whole Naxal movement acquired a national character with the merger. And what happened that today if we see CPI Maoist is the deadliest left-wing extremist outfit, and this is responsible for, today it is responsible for more than 80% of Naxal incidents, 80% of Naxal incidents and more than 90% of deaths which are reported in Naxal violence. More than 80% of deaths which are reported in Naxal violence, the organization, the deadliest rebel group among left-wing extremist outfit is CPI Maoist. And all of you should never confuse between CPI Marxist and CPI Maoist. CPI Maoist is a Naxal outfit, but CPI Marxist, CPIM is a very important political party of India which has deep belief in Constitution of India. It is contesting election in West Bengal, it was in power, earlier in Tripura it was in power. Okay, so you should never confuse. So CPI Maoist is the deadliest rebel group among left-wing extremist outfits and is responsible for 80% of the Naxal incidents which India has reported in past 10 years. It is responsible for more than 90% of deaths which has been reported in Naxal violence, Many a times this rebel group has attacked security forces. The country has not forgotten a very deadly attack in which more than 75 personnel and officers of CRPF were brutally killed in Dantewara district of Chhattisgarh. Okay, and many such incidents. Even today, when we have to plan conduct of election, we have to make special arrangements in all the districts which are affected with left-wing extremism. When it was formed in 2004, immediately Chhattisgarh government banned CPI Maoist. After that, Andhra Pradesh banned CPI Maoist. Other states were, confused what to do. Some states said banning is not a solution to the problem. But finally, I would just like you all to remember that in 2009, finally, this CPI Maoist was banned, in 2009. It was declared a terrorist organization. It was declared a terrorist organization in 2009. Okay, it was banned. It was ban on CPI Maoist, and it was declared terrorist organization under UAPA, Unlawful Activities Prevention Act of 1967. Unlawful Activities Prevention Act of 1967. I hope that all of you must have heard about this law. If not, let me tell you that as far as Unlawful Activities Prevention Act of 1967 is concerned, this is a special law, This is a special law enacted by Parliament, in 1967, and this is a legal weapon, This is a legal weapon with which India is fighting or combating. India is fighting with unlawful activities, which can be a threat, to unity, integrity, and sovereignty of the country. Okay. So any unlawful activity which can be a threat to unity, integrity, and sovereignty of the country, we are fighting with this legal weapon, which we have called, which we have termed as, UAPA, Unlawful Activities Prevention Act, Unlawful Activities Prevention Act of 1967, 1960. We don't have very good experience, We don't have very good experience of, a special law in India. We enacted many laws, but we have, repealed, But as far as UAPA is concerned, right, as far as UAPA is concerned, it is proving to be a very effective law, okay, because we don't have, right, we don't have very good experience with, right, with unlawful activities, with special laws in India, but this UAPA is proving to be a very good law, okay. Why I am telling you, this is considered a very progressive, dynamic, forward-moving, successful special law. We have amended this law for the first time in 1969. Thereafter, we have amended this law in 1972. Then once again, we amended UAPA in 1986. Then we amended this law again in 2004. We amended this law in 2008. We even amended this Unlawful Activities Prevention Act in 2019. And on this amendment, there was a question in May 2019 as well. I hope you are aware that earlier individuals can be declared terrorist, but now, as per amendment of 2019, individuals can also be declared terrorist. Earlier, organization can be declared as terrorist, but now with the amendment of 2019, even individuals can be declared terrorist. We will have a separate discussion on UAPA, but I would just like you all to remember that it's a very effective law, it's a very good law, it's a legal weapon with which we are fighting the unlawful activities which can be a threat to unity, integrity, sovereignty of the country. We are fighting those problems which are related with internal security with UAPA. Though we don't have very good experience with a special law, I would just like to bring this to your notice that one special law we enacted in the name of MISA, Maintenance of Internal Security Act 1971. But we repealed this act because of controversy in 1977. So this law was repealed. Okay. Similarly, we also enacted TADA. You might have heard about TADA, Terrorist and Disruptive Activities Prevention Act, TADA, Terrorist and Disruptive Activities Prevention Act. In 1985 we enacted, but this was also repealed in 1985. Not only that, we have also enacted POTA, Prevention of Terrorist Activities Act, as a special law in 2002, but immediately in 2004 we repealed POTA. And there is no need for me to tell you that we have also enacted AFSPA, Armed Forces Special Power Act, AFSPA, Armed Forces Special Power Act 1958. Okay, and even this is what is controversial. So we don't have, in India, we don't have very good experience with a special law, but despite that, UAPA, Unlawful Activities Prevention Act of 1967 is one special law which is proving an effective legal weapon to combat such unlawful activities which can be a threat to unity, integrity and sovereignty of the country. And this law has undergone amendments on several occasions. The recent most amendment was in the year 2019. We will have a separate discussion on UAPA, but I just want you all to remember that in 2009 we have declared, we have declared CPI Maoist, we have declared CPI Maoist as a terrorist organization. We have declared CPI Maoist as a terrorist organization under UAPA 1967. So since 2009, this CPI Maoist is a banned organization in India. We have declared it as a terrorist organization. Despite that, it is able to right? Despite that, it is able to, despite that, it is able to, uh, carry out attacks on security forces. You will be surprised to know the number of people, right? The kind of people who are associated with this movement. I would just like to share with you, right? I would just like to share with you few things, right? Few things related with CPI Maoist, related with the CPI Maoist. What I would say that if you see this CPI Maoist, uh, in this regard, I would just like you all to remember this name, that is PLGA. PLGA. What is this? This is People's Liberation Guerrilla Army. People's Liberation Guerrilla Army. Okay, and this is the armed wing of, this is the armed wing of CPI Maoist. Okay, so you will find, right, why we are saying that left wing extremism is a big threat to internal security of the country, a big threat to the internal security of the country, because large number of people are associated with Naxal movement. Large number of people are associated with Naxal movement. Okay, as per the estimates of Ministry of Home Affairs, around 6,000 plus armed cadres under PLGA, People's Liberation Guerrilla Army, which is the armed wing of CPI Maoist, and these 6,000 people are carrying weapons. Some of them even have AK-47, INSAS rifle, SLR rifle. They also have, carbine, machine guns. They also have LMG, and of course they have country-made firearms. So 6,000 plus armed cadres are there. Now, you might be thinking, from where they have got weapons? So in initial days, what they did? In initial days, they started attacking security forces in the form of, when the security force will be moving, that would be the time they will attack security forces, and after the attack, they will loot the weapons. So they expanded their firepower, and by using the weapon, they started extortion, started asking people to pay money to them, and they used that money to further expand their firepower. They started purchasing weapon. Okay, so weapons have reached to CPI Maoist armed cadre. Either they have purchased through money which they collected through extortion, or they have looted the weapon from security forces after making attack. And let me tell you, they started using IED, improvised explosive devices. So I hope you all are aware that in the mining belt, for easy mining, digging and dredging, we have to carry out explosion. So mining companies have explosives which they have to use for explosion and then to dig and dredge easily. So what CPI Maoist armed cadre will do? they will loot the explosives and then they will make a improvised device from that explosive with which they will attack the security forces when they are on move, and then they will loot their weapons. And now when they are having weapons, they are using that weapon to create fear in the mind of people and the business houses which are operating in Naxal affected area, and they are into extortion of money, and now they are using that money for further expanding their firepower. Okay, so 6,000 plus armed cadres are there associated with this movement. Not only that, right? Not only that, I would also like you all to remember around 35,000 of cadres of CPI Maoist, they are carrying traditional weapon. So they are carrying, right, they are carrying sword, they are carrying bow and arrow, and their arrow is not a normal one. The tip of the arrow they will dip in poison which they are collecting from a snake and other wild animals. And when they hit with that arrow to someone, that person may meet with death with instantaneously, immediately. So very deadly weapons, then sharp-edged weapons. Okay, so 35,000 plus. And a new twist is that there are more than this estimate, and this can be definitely disputed. Okay, this can definitely be disputed. Around 90 lakh Naxal sympathizers are there in India, even today, 90 lakhs. Meaning, people who have a feel that violence by Naxal outfits is justified. Since they have been the victim of injustice, and then now they have decided to carry out attacks on security forces, it is justified. So 90 lakhs such people are there who have a feel. We are calling them Naxal sympathizers, who have sympathy with Naxals, who have a feel that this movement is justified. And I told you, no matter what, there cannot be justification for violence in any civilized society and in democratic country. We cannot cheer death. We cannot cheer bloodshed. We cannot justify killings. Though we may have sympathy with the problems which they have faced, but on that account we cannot justify what they are doing today. Okay, so what I am just trying to tell you, number of people, and a new twist in this whole thing is urban Naxalism. I will be talking about urban Naxalism separately, but urban Naxalism word we are using for whom? Middle class, city-based intelligentsia who are indoctrinated with this ideology, and they are sympathizing with the movement, they are protecting the movement, they are encouraging the movement by being in cities, whereas Naxals are battling it out with security forces and the state in dense forest, in remote areas. Now, whether the urban Naxalism is a new threat or whether it is a new political narrative to curb dissent and is a threat to democracy, that we will discuss separately. But now for sure, there are some people who are residing in cities and they are having sympathy with the movement and they are encouraging the movement, not through active participation, but by writing articles, editorials in newspapers, by promoting people to join the movement in remote part. Okay, so what makes left-wing extremism a threat to internal security? The number of people who are associated with the movement. So I told you 6,000 plus armed cadres, 35,000 cadres who are carrying traditional weapons, and more than 90 lakhs people in India who have sympathy with this movement. They feel that the movement is justified, and they are also, using their social status to encourage the ongoing movement in which the Naxals who are battling it with Indian state, they are being provided encouragement and other kind of support by these people. So this what makes, right, this what makes left-wing extremism a threat to internal security of the country. And I would also like you all to have this understanding that even today, this left-wing extremism is causing huge economic as well as emotional loss. Economic and emotional loss to country. Economic and emotional losses. Okay, and I would just like you all to have this understanding. Economic loss is when Naxals are making attack, when they are blowing up railway tracks, railway stations, primary health centers, schools, other infrastructure. So direct loss is loss of infrastructure. But indirect loss is something which we need to see. To combat Naxals, we have to deploy security forces, we have to spend money. Had this problem not been there, we would have been using the same money for other developmental projects. Not only this, because of Naxalism, the process of development is being slowed down. In the mining belt of India, we are not able to mine minerals. We are not able to construct roads. We are not able to generate employment. Investors are fearful of making investment in such regions. So if you will think deeper, then only you can understand the quantum of economic loss which Naxalism is causing. Even today I told you, when we have to conduct elections in a Naxal affected area, we have to make special arrangements. And those arrangements are putting additional burden on the exchequer of the government, putting additional stress on the economic status of the governments. So huge economic losses and huge emotional losses as well. You need to understand whether it is a member of security force or whether it is, a member of civil society, whether it is, informer of police, or even you can say if Naxals are being killed, then it's a huge economic loss, emotional loss. Because again, right, let us assume one security personnel who was killed in a Naxal attack. Now, you cannot even imagine what kind of emotional loss it has created, irreparable damage it has caused to the state and to the family. Now you see that if that person was the sole bread earner of the family, now his children education will suffer, the care of old parents will suffer, the children will grow with anger against Naxals and even sometimes dissatisfaction with the state. So you can't even imagine the quantum of emotional loss which left-wing extremism is causing. So while you are talking about Naxalism as a threat to internal security, you must mention that direct economic and emotional losses which it is causing and indirect losses which it is causing. Based on all these things, what we are saying, that despite the fact that there is a declining trend in Naxal violence since 2010, left-wing extremism remains a threat to internal security of the country. So this is all about the current status of left-wing extremism.